better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll those dice. Man, life's so...
Rob, it's finally time to draw steel.
Draw steel. I've done it. I've drawn my steel, and we're ready to engage in cinematic, tactical, dramatic combat with monsters. Heroic.
Fantasy
with monsters.
So this is the new game that is finally out, like available for purchase.
That's right.
By MCDM Productions. That's a company founded by Matt Colville. And this is their new game by Matt Colville, James Introcaso, Willie Abil. Robert was some Eastern European name, and you know, we don't truck with people with those types of names on this show. So let's get into it. Sorry, I have one of those. Hey, I'm excited to talk about this game. It's really slick. It's really cool.
It is really slick. It is really cool. We also, I mean, we first got wind of this over a year ago. We reviewed the playtest. Actually, I was double checking that, and it was almost exactly a year ago that we released that episode. I think it came out on like the 18th of September. So it has been roughly a year, though. In fairness, this game actually came out a month ago. We were at Gen Con. We have not had a chance to really dig into it because it's meaty. But yeah, we were finally here. So it started out as just like the MCDM RPG, and now it is a whole thing. It is Draw Steel, and it's 2 books, at least, one on heroes and one on monsters. We're going to talk about heroes today, which is most like the playtest that we reviewed a year ago, but there are significant changes.
Right. And it's similar to the way a lot of role-playing games are structured, right? You've got one player-focused book, one DM-focused book. The book we're talking about, Heroes, is mostly rules for character creation, right? It's just mostly character options, and then it's also your standard rules for like, hey, how do roles work? How does combat work? How does negotiations work? Yeah, that's what's in the Heroes book.
Yeah. So we should talk about what this is. It is fairly easy to describe this product, this book. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to go into detail. We're going to try to focus on the things that are different, because there's a lot of it, but we still kind of have to cover what it is. So what is it, Matt?
Well, it's a fantasy role-playing game, but it's a very particular type of fantasy role-playing game. It's one that focuses on, really cool, epic, heroic fantasy. It's one that focuses its rules on creating fun and dramatic tactical combat, and it's one that just puts out, like a Sunday potluck dinner of character options for your players, right? So that they can really come up with cool combos of character options and really try and exactly embody whatever their fantasy is for their characters.
Yeah. Fantasy power fantasy is a good way to put it, believe it or not.
Yeah. We need both fantasies in there. There's 2 types. One is elf fantasy, and the other is your imagination fantasy.
There are 4 main descriptors, and I liked this in the playtest, and I like it still in the main game, about like what type of game it is. And I increasingly appreciate games telling us what type of game it is and what type of adventures you can have. And in the MCDM RPG, in Draw Steel, it is tactical, it is heroic, it is cinematic, and it is fantasy. And that is probably familiar in some way to you. I think all of those descriptors are accurate. In our first review, I mentioned that I'm not so sure that the rules encourage cinematic combat, and I'll get into details about why I believe that, because I still do believe that. But the rest of it, pretty on the money. You are a hero. You are using nifty tactics. It is fantastic fantasy. And yeah, you get to be big damn heroes, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it has a very clear, like, through its art and the description of powers and magic and the world, like a clear vision of what type of fantasy this is. Like, this is the like fantasy that I don't know, like World of Warcraft,
Yeah. I mean,
Divinity,
Diablo.
Original Diablo. Like, you're wearing cool armor
Yes.
that has extra spikes, and your person, your character, the heroes stand out as, oh yeah, they're cooler than some average
You've
person.
got big pauldrons, and you can, leap into the middle of a group of gobos and mess them up. It is big fantasy. Sort of the literary thing is, you're closer to like a Joe Abercrombie novel, or like Matt mentioned last time, the Black Company. Like, you're a guy, and everybody else, yields before your mighty sword. You can take on a dozen guys at once. It's cool. That's the fantasy that's being sold to you, and it is accurate. You can do that in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. While a lot of the setting is inspired by the Black Company and stuff like that, but unlike the Black Company, you're not just like a soldier trying to survive. You're the big damn hero who the Black Company is like, we should get away from these people. They're gonna get us killed. Like, to me, a lot of the art and the aesthetic feels like something from what is that game, like League of Legends, or the TV show based on it. It's like, oh yeah, when you make a character, like, you've got a cool weapon or a cool suite of magic powers that no one can deny. Like, when you fight 10 random soldiers, you're gonna fuck them up in a very cool way.
Yeah, the playtest did not have art, and we this made it a little bit difficult to figure out some of the aesthetics. But the Draw Steel RPG has a ton of art, and a lot of great art, and it communicates a very precise aesthetic. It tells you kind of everything that you need to know. Every hero has like a distinct look, kind of like an iconic weapon, unique armor. Like, they're their own thing, and this is exactly what you're encouraged to play and think about. You are a distinct and unique hero. You're not just some guy. Everybody is a big deal, which is cool. But it is definitely not like one of those things where you start out as a nobody and you're the same as every other fighter, or I guess in this case every other tactician. No, you are somebody special.
So I think the two other big things that you need to know is, again, like, you have so many character options.
Yeah.
You're picking a species and a class and a background and a kit and one more that I'm forgetting as I'm trying to list them all. But then you're also picking your, like, powers and abilities within each of those things. So it's a very
too.
There's perks
Ancestries,
as well.
background, classes, kits, perks, maybe complications if you want them.
Complication. Yeah. So this is a character building group's delight, right?
Yes.
This is the people who like to map out their characters.
Yeah. And
play this game.
It is a, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's an overwhelming amount of choices. I think that can be fun and cool, but you are going to spend a lot of time picking, even at first level, like what you want, because there's so many options, which is cool. You can do a lot of cool things. We'll talk about some of the options that you could come up with when we get to characters. And I like this, but it is not a pick up and go type of game. You are going to spend multiple hours probably building a character, and you're probably going to want to do it together as a group.
Yeah, and like, this is a freaking hefty book. It's over 400 pages and it's only one of two. But I think it is important to remember that unlike other systems, the character options are 200 pages of the book, right? So do players and even you need to read over in detail all 10 levels of every character option to get started? No. Like, you're going to tell them, okay, here are, the 9 classes. Which one speaks to you? And they're like, well, it's either this one or this one. You're like, all right, read the 2 pages at the beginning of each of those character options, and then you'll be good to go.
So we'll circle back to character creation because it's important. But
yeah,
there's also, and this was not in the playtest, and it was something, Matt, you distinctly said that you wanted, and we now have a brief description of Orden and the Timescape, which is the world that Draw Steel takes place in. And in our last
there's a lovely one-page art that's incredibly Planescape 2E. It's so Planescape 2E.
It is a very Planescape 2E. You mentioned wanting a gazetteer. This is not a gazetteer, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What is it, Matt? What do we have here?
Well, so it's here's our take on the like cool epic fantasy world. It's, I think, very clearly hinted because of in the entire book, where did they decide to put the sidebar that says, find out what's next for MCDM, go to this website here that, probably one of the next books that they produce will be an Orden in the Timescape, setting book. But it's, hey, we've got like your typical medieval world, and then we've got some like crazier medieval fantasy worlds that lean more into the like, yeah, okay, this is like that city from that League of Legends cartoon. Like there's some crazy stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And then here's our take on the Timescape is the multiverse, the planes, right? And we've added in, sure, there's hell and an elemental plane and a Feywild, but also there's, space pirates and some art of some ships that look like that guy who did all the concept art for Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some cool art, and the parts of this I like the most are the higher planes, which is very like Spelljammer, Starfinder stuff, and it's neat. That's where you're, four-armed time bandits. They're not actually called time bandits. It's called like time raiders. What are they called?
Time raiders.
Anyway, there's some cool stuff here. I do want to draw attention to one paragraph, and I'm not the first person to point this out, but at the end of this section, there's a little bit that says, Orden and the Timescape were both designed over the last 25 years to be an explicitly commercial setting. A product where you could find all the things everyone expects to find in a classic fantasy setting, with new takes on classic tropes and a little more, why are things like this work done to ground everything and make things feel plausible. None of this makes Orden better than other settings, it just gives it character. I don't know about you, Matt, but this puts a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I didn't love reading this, and there were a couple other areas where I believe it's at the beginning of Ancestries, where it says, there's a bunch of different ancestries. Why? I don't know. Maybe a wizard did it. Like literally, I think there is maybe a wizard did it in there. And there are moments where you get the impression that the writers and designers don't think that this is important or that it's worth dwelling on. And it's okay if you don't, but like, why should I care about it if you don't? And that sort of did bother me a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's very clearly signaling to me what type of player and GM this is. This game is for, and I think it's for people who are like, hey, there's a fantasy world out there, but we're not worried about that because right now, the heroes have to make a deal with the consortium of devils aligned with House Vorona to stop Ajax conquest and then go find the lost orb of the Dragon Lord, and they're like doing a thing, and like what's going on with this world? What where it come from, doesn't matter. And it seems like this is like, hey, the default setting is not important. It's kind of like there if you want it. Maybe the assumption is you'll either take the very loose couple page description and then make it your own, or you've already got your own fantasy world that you're going to play this in.
It sounds like, in fairness, they're probably going to do an Orden world guide or something like that, and there's more information to be had. But I do feel like some of the way that it's referred to indicated that this was not a priority for them, and it's frustrating because there's some really cool stuff there. Like the central conflict of sort of like this moment in time is there's a guy named Ajax the Iron Saint who's, conquering the world from a flying elf fortress. Like, that's cool. Tell me, let's hear more about that. But
yeah,
that's
he's
all right.
on the cover of the book, and he looks like one of the like Warhammer, like 40,000 like guys who like got sad and like betrayed his father or
Yes.
Emperor Daddy.
does.
I don't know their names, but like he looks like one of those guys. I'm like, oh, that's a fucking great villain. What about a really beautiful man who wants to kill you all?
Yeah. He's like a fallen angel, except not fallen, just like a avenging angel guy with cool armor. It's very cool. It's a very cool setting. There's cool elements.
This looks like my own prep villain. Beautiful man who hates you? Question mark. And then we go from there.
There are worse starting points for a villain.
No, it's a great villain.
But yeah. Anyway, so there's a few pages, and it's interesting. Like there's stuff to work with here, but I would have liked a little more.
Yeah. So I think, I think it's like a fun idea if the default setting of a campaign was like, hey, you might start off in this medieval fantasy world, but the journey of your players will eventually you'll be at like a weird science fantasy space station, and then you'll be in hell, and then you'll be sailing the sea of stars. Sure. That I think is cool. I mean, you're never gonna like not get me excited to be like, hey, we're doing Planescape right away. But again, this is just like a system. We don't have the campaign setting yet. So could Draw Steel in a different future, perhaps maybe in just a few short months or years, be kind of a really cool 3-book package where we have heroes, monsters, and then the world. It absolutely could be. Right now we just have heroes and monsters.
It's not like a deal breaker, but this does seem kind of brief. But that's okay. It was more than what we had before, which was literally nothing. So
can we talk about the system and what the characters will be using just really quickly? So we talked about in our playtest episode. It's not that different, right? If you're like, what is going on here? Basically, you're always making the same roll. I think people like that, right?
Yes.
The entire system is built around the power roll.
Yes.
You roll 2 10-sided die, and you do a sort of Traveler powered by the apocalypse comparison, right? Where there are 3 outcomes. And they're not called anything, so that you can label them either at the table on the fly or in a specific power. They're not called like mixed success, failure, and they're called tier 1, 2, and 3. If you roll 11 or lower, it's tier 1, 12 to 16, tier 2, 17 or higher, tier 3. And like in combat, that works as you only do a little bit of damage. You do the normal amount of damage and normal effect. You do an extraordinary effect at tier 3. But if, you're the DM and the players make just sort of a generic roll for doing some sort of heroic activity, and they do tier 1, you can be like, well, that means that this happens, right?
The nice thing about this, and the book acknowledges this, and it's a deliberate design goal, is that there's never an outcome where nothing happens. Like, you always do damage if you're doing an attack. The math works out to, even if you aren't adding anything, which you are always going to be adding something, you're going to get a tier 2 outcome more than half the time. And yeah, it's cool because all of your abilities have a very simple chart, and they'll do very exciting things on a tier 3 outcome, but they won't ever do nothing. And everything, like Matt said, just about every roll is one of these, and it's as simple as rolling and adding your relevant ability, and maybe an edge or a bane. Actually, we should talk about edges and banes, because this
Plus
is
2, minus 2.
It's actually
super easy.
very, very simple. It's basically like minor advantage. If you get an edge from something, you can have a +1. If you get a second edge, then you automatically go up a tier. It's very simple. The same thing for banes in the other direction. If you have a bane, it's a -1. 2 banes, you go down a tier. This is very, very simple. They don't have a lot of like bonuses, so you don't have to do a lot of like adding pluses and minuses. In fact, you can almost only get bonuses from like a couple of things, skills, and a few very specific abilities. So that actually makes figuring out your final roll pretty simple.
And the great thing for the players is taking all the numbers and dice and penalties and communicating it to your DM is always going to be the same, no matter like what type of roll it is and no matter how hard the roll is. So your players know, well, I have an edge and here's my bonus to this roll. I roll it. I add the numbers on my 2 dice to whatever those modifiers are. Oh, and I got a 14. I know total. I know that's always going to be tier 2. You as the DM, all you have to do, like outside of combat and outside of this like initiative system is say, hey, was this an easy test, a medium test, and a hard test? And it seems like, so those rules are codified. You have like a little chart that you'll definitely want on the back of your DM screen that I think you'll quickly memorize. But you can also just kind of, it also seems like one of those things where you can wing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, that unless it's super hard, a medium success, a tier 2 is going to succeed. And then you can just kind of decide, well, if it was super easy, they just succeed. If it was a little difficult, with tier 2, they succeed, but I can throw in a little complication or a consequence.
And part of what is nice about this is it means that the general like range of numbers you're dealing with is small. Like your abilities, your characteristics, your ability scores are never going to get higher than like a +6, and that's at the very like highest tiers of play. So you're not having to, add huge numbers together to get anything, and I think it makes the rolling very simple, which is good because lots of other parts of the game are not simple. A lot of what happens after you roll is quite complicated because a lot of abilities, well, almost all of them, we should mention, have to do with distance and effect and whatever, because this game is meant to be played on a grid 100%. There's a lot of pushing and pulling and moving and shifting and tactical considerations about where you are and where your enemies are, which will take more time to figure out than the actual roll itself.
I also like how the, success with a consequence or failure with a consequence works in that. So if you've got something immediate in mind, we're like, okay, yeah, you succeed on your task, but the pressure builds on this other thing that's going on over here. Or now, you don't have that lockpick set for the next door. You'll need to charm your way past or something like that. Okay, sure. If you don't have any of those in your mind, you can just take your director, which is the name of the game master in this system, additional resource, right? You have a pool of threat of it's called malice, right? And you can use it to pump up the next encounter. It's what you'll spend to make monsters do bad things.
Yeah, there's some really cool options mechanically for coming up with success with a consequence. Like you can take away a recovery, you can add a malice, you can do a little bit of stamina damage or apply a condition. There's lots of like neat tools for you to allow the success, but make it have some down the road consequences.
I don't know if there's anything else specifically I want to talk about the system other than like, hey, it's designed to make combat really, really interesting. You kind of use some classic side initiative, and you're expected to work together to like combo your stuff. I think when we're and I think we're about to get into the individual classes and how they work, but I think a handy way, and I don't know if the designers would appreciate this comparison, I think they would, to think about this system is, what if the clunky 4th edition of Dungeons and Dragons was redesigned for a 2nd edition with some more modern game sensibilities?
Yeah.
And maybe they kind of like fix the sort of treadmill problem of nothing really mattering and made it actually interesting, like with how a character class works. That would be this system. It's not 4E 2E. It's maybe 4E as a starting point with the rest of game design over the last 20 years added in.
Yeah. My impression of this when we looked at the playtest was that it was the equivalent of like 4.5 or 4.75 or maybe 4.0, 2.0. But it's now that plus. Matt's right. It's like the 4th edition DNA is like very obvious. Like the starting point is there. But like it's all the cool stuff about 4th edition. It's all the like fun things that you liked with none of the like cruft and a bunch of like, modern game design added in. Like it's a whole new product. But if you liked the fun stuff about 4th edition, you will probably like Draw Steel.
Yeah. And you're getting rid of the like gaminess of, oh, I use my daily power, I can never do that again. Why can't I? You just can't, because we have this like class resource system.
Right.
And you're also getting rid of the other big criticism, I think, in my mind of 4E, is you just got these D20 rolls and your number constantly going up, and that makes you initially feel good, but then in 4E it doesn't matter because all other numbers also go up, like all the enemy numbers and target DCs. So number going up doesn't matter. In this, when your number goes up, which does happen, it happens rarely, it matters a whole lot because you're always rolling on that same, task resolution dice power roll chart, right? If you get a 12, right, that's a tier 2 success. So if you have a +1 now where you didn't before, that's a huge boost to your character's power level.
Yeah, and another thing about 4E is that often your PC felt like just like a reskinned bucket of abilities. Like there was not a lot of like class identity or distinction.
Yeah, what's the difference between a ranger and a rogue, right? They're both skirmishers, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
And that is very much not the case in Draw Steel. There is a great deal of class identity and variation that will actually matter within those classes. So it addresses a bunch of the shortcomings of 4E. But if you like big, flashy, fun abilities, which was the cool thing about 4E, this has that in spades, but like none of the other stuff that we just mentioned. So that is to me a strong pitch for a game, and they really have like pulled it off here.
Okay, so we promised to talk about the classes. Let's get to making a hero. You are choosing ancestry, background, class, kits, my favorite thing, perks, and if you want, complications. So really, you're going down a menu and you're choosing one option to start with from each of these buckets.
Yeah. The ancestries are, and I like this. I appreciate this. Daggerheart does something simpler. You've got your standard fantasy races. You've got humans, dwarves, elves, polder, which are like halflings, and orcs. But then you've also got dragon knights, which are dragon people. You've got Hakan, which are big stone giants. You've got Memenek, which are automatons, robot people from the plane of law. You've got revenants, which is just you're dead. And then a Time Raider, which is a four-armed psionic
Punk.
space guy, and and devils. And yeah, you can play it standard. You can have your classic Lord of the Rings adventuring party, or you can get weird with it.
Yeah. I love getting weird with it. And speaking of 4E, Rob, the way the ancestries are described is exactly like 4E in that you have a half-page splash art with always two different characters, usually of different genders, just like 4E. So it's like, I was like, maybe I'm going too far with this 4E comparison. And then I got to the ancestry page. I'm like, oh, look, it's just like my old 4E player's handbook.
Yeah. I also like the way that ancestries, I mean, if you love choices, folks, you've come to the right place, because the ancestries all come with a signature trait. So all devils get silver tongue, but then you have 3 ancestry points to spend on a sort of like a list of other abilities, some more expensive than others. And so one Dragon Knight might be radically different from another Dragon Knight, and one dwarf might be different from another. And I think that's cool, but it is more choices.
Yeah, it's more choices, but I mean, it's like really screaming for players to be like, do you want to do something different? Yeah, sure, you can be a human, but you can take one of the traits from a dwarf, so you can be a half dwarf or something like that, like, or to just reflect something unique about your hero. Like, this is just screaming for players to mess with it. But even within the assigned buckets, you have a ton of choices, right? There's you got to make 3 to 4 ancestry point picks.
Yeah,
and then you're on to our backgrounds. Right?
I should mention. Sorry, one thing that I do like.
Yeah,
and they make this easy for you. Every class, ancestry, whatever, has a suggestion for a quick build. Just pick these 2 things. So if you know you want to be a woad elf, but you don't want to think about it, you can just pick the ones that suggest for you. It's nice that this is an option. They have tried to, at least if you have no interest in making these many choices, you can just take what's offered.
Yeah. And same is true for the backgrounds. If you want to be a gladiator, well, pick the 2 skills, gymnastics and jump, and the exploration perk, friend catapult, which is exactly what it sounds like. You throw a friend as a catapult. And if that's giving you an idea of the flavor of like what kind of like abilities you have, it's throw your friend in combat.
And there are 4 choices for your background, but you can take a pre-designed pick, and all it really is, unless you want it to be more, is just like, here are the skills and languages that you get. And I think that's fine. I think that's relatively simple. So if you just want to like throw together a background that like gives you the right selection of skills are, I don't want to say skills are not important, but they are not the most important. So you don't need to dwell on this. This could be something that takes a long time, or it could be something that takes no time at all.
I think there are 18 backgrounds to choose from, but choosing and like once you've picked it, it will be very fast. And most of the backgrounds is just like questions about like, hey, this was your job before you were a really cool hero. What was that like? What you picked up some things. They're not the coolest things, but it tells us who you were before you became a hero. And then we're on to the real meat of this entire system, which are the 9 classes. Cinsor, try and do my Spock voice. Cinsors, Captain. Conduit, Elementalist, Fury, Null, Shadow, Tactician, Talent, and Troubadour.
So I really like this. These are going to be recognizable to D20 D&D players, but I like that they have decided to name them something different and change their flavor a little bit. Where as we are going down that path where D&D becomes a style of play rather than a specific brand or game itself, this is I think an important point of divergence, right? Like you've got the censor is a lot like a paladin, right? But it's not quite a paladin. The conduit is a lot like a cleric, but it's not quite a cleric, so on and so forth. So you can figure out what you're playing, but they've, by, I think, even if it's just like a name, by distinguishing themselves a little bit, they've given themselves some like design room to mess with, and also started the process of divorcing us from concepts like paladin, which I think, it's time they're left in the dustbin of TTRPG history, or relegated to a very specific place where you want to be playing a paladin.
Speaking of a paladin, the paladin is the thing that's not a paladin is a censor. We fight until hell is empty.
Sir Vantikalal, damn it, I tried so hard. Vantikalisax is a dragon knight.
Yeah.
It looks cool.
Well, he didn't tell us that hell is the name of his craft brew beer keg, and so it's just so yes, the censor is similar to a paladin, but I think very different. In the way it's presented to players.
The censor picks an order. You can be an exorcist, an oracle, or a paragon, which kind of tell you like what you can expect from that. Their heroic resource is wrath. We should talk about how.
Yeah, let's talk about heroic resources.
Yeah, we should talk. So this is going to be a lot of things. There's 9 of them, but I think it's illustrative to talk about how each class gains their heroic resource, because something that is hard for me to wrap my head around, and I really do need to play this game, is how much you have, because you can do some really like impressive things with the abilities that are given to you, but you do need your heroic resource to do it. So a censor gains at the beginning of a combat encounter wrath equal to your victories, and then at the start of each of their turns, 2 more wrath, and then the first time each combat round that a creature judged by you, we'll talk about judgment in a second, you gain another wrath, and then
So I think before you go into more details with wrath, this is Draw Steel's solution to the 4E problem of that essentially all classes are the same because they all just have your encounter and daily and at-will abilities, is that every class has a heroic resource that they need to spend to do their cool things. What's common to all of them is that as you progress through the adventuring session or adventuring arc, you gain victories, which means you start each subsequent combat at a higher level of power. However, it becomes more risky because you've burned up your like hit points and your like recoveries and stuff like that. So there's that we talked about this at length at the playtest. There's this interesting like push and pull. What's cool about the classes and how they're distinguished from each other is they all have different ways of gaining their heroic abilities.
Right.
And while at the end of the day, like a power of a censor might do a similar thing to the power of a fury, you hurt something and you push them back. The way they're deciding to navigate through the tactical heroic combat is different because they're seeking a different resource and they're gaining a resource from different things. So that's how the classes are distinguished.
So the censor has a baseline ability that is actually kind of like a hunter's mark. You pick a bad guy, you judge them, and then you both gain wrath for attacking them and have special things that you can do to your judged enemy. So that's sort of like the class identity of the censor is pick a foe and fuck them up.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's like a little bit of the Hunter's Mark ability from 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. a lot of the Inquisitor class from Pathfinder
Yeah,
and
yes.
Pathfinder 2E.
Mhm.
And then, of course, plenty of Paladin mixed in there with this theme of you are hunting, evil or rooting out evil if you go the more like, I'm going to get into the studying magic and finding these things.
Yeah. There's a lot of attack with like a rider in the sensors. So you do damage and heal, or do damage and push, or do damage and give an ally a surge or something. It's very fun. I this is one of my favorites to read about. You get in the middle of things and you do a bunch of cool stuff. It has like all of these classes do have like a really distinct identity, and it's clear like from the abilities that you're given how you're supposed to play this one, which is cool, which is I think often hard to do. And if there is, I have many points of praise for Draw Steel, but one of the ones is like each class has a distinct role and like play style.
Yeah. And then, I mean, within the class, you're essentially choosing a sub feature. Like for just, we probably won't have time to go into all of them, but for Censor, it's Exorcist, Oracle, and Paragon, right? Paragon's like, definitely more like Paladin, but also leadership, right? But like an Exorcist is like, I'm gonna find those Diabolists that are hidden here and fuck them up. But right, yeah, the class identity is the same for all of them. It's really like how you want to accomplish those goals, giving you plenty of character building choices, especially because classes, after we talk about like, hey, this is how they gain their resource that you can use to do cool stuff. And here's your one ability that is common to all of them, Judgment for Censor, is picking your powers, right? Powers are all do very different things, and they're all very 4E in their like stat blocks, right? Some of them cost 1 resource, some of them cost 3, some of them cost 5, and that tells you their power level. And then it's just a menu that you're picking a la carte from.
And the order you pick and the subclass that you pick kind of helps you figure out sort of your character path. There are still a lot of options, but they've given you ways to narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah. And I misspoke. Of course, there's higher level ones that cost even more of your resource points. But, there's some basic ones. So I really like the Censor. I think it makes a lot of sense. Any other points on the Censor?
No. I do want to briefly mention that there are tiers of play. Or sorry, echelons of play is what they're called. And yeah, I know. And this is important for a reason that I am going to explain in just a second. So you've got 1st through 3rd, 4th through 6th, 7th through 9th, and then 10th. So there's 4 echelons. You get some sort of big character abilities at 5, 7, 9, and 10, which is confusing, but those correspond in some way to those echelons of play. So you'll get big signature abilities at those levels, which does make sense, but it was a little confusing when I was reading the classes, because there's not something for every single level, but there's some significant ones at certain ones. Anyway, on to the next thing.
Yeah, the conduit is your cleric, is your priest, is your. It's definitely not a warlock. It's like, hey, you have devotion to a god or a saint, and your piousness in embodying that god means that their power flows through you, which is a great way to describe like I feel like new players to the basic tropes of fantasy D&D have a hard time grokking the cleric. Like, oh, I'm a
Yeah.
spellcaster,
Yes.
but it's like, are my spells different? Well, no, they're not really.
They're
I
just from a
think
different
people in like,
lift, and you can't cast
yeah,
the
they're from-
wizard spells. Why? Don't ask.
no, they're the cool ones, by the way. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're coming from like a World of Warcraft, you're like, well, the priest is just the healer,
Right. And a lot of people think
sure,
a lot of
okay.
people come to D&D and they're like, "Well, cleric, that's a healer," and I was like, "Well, sort of, but not really."
Yeah. I mean, you're the only one who could do it, but yeah, sure. So you are like a healer, but I think the like vision of flavoring it, conduit is, I think, a perfect perfect word for our divine spellcaster prayer. Listen, I like being a conduit more than praying to the gods. It's like, hey, you embody them and their power flows through you. Sure, it's the same kind of thing.
I like the
yeah,
flavor
sure.
better,
There's
though.
also a thing called prayer in this game too, but I really like how it's flavored.
You could flavor it differently. So the heroic resource for the conduit is piety, and like the censor, you start with piety equal to your victories, and then you get 1d3 piety, and then there's a cool mechanic for getting more. You can pray to the gods at the beginning of, I think, or on any of the start of your turn, and then you roll a 1d3, and if you roll badly, you get a little piety and you take damage. But if you roll well, you get 2 piety and you can activate a special power from one of your domains. The domain that you pick also gives you other ways to gain piety. I think this is really cool. So it's like if you have a nature domain, the first time in an encounter that a creature near you takes elemental damage, you gain 2 piety. Or if you've got the sun domain, same thing for fire or holy damage. You know, this is, I think, really cool. You pick your domains based on, you know, what you want to worship, but then it sort of like impacts how you play and sort of your relationship to your party and the battlefield around you. I think this is really neat. Again, lots more choices, but it's cool.
Yeah. And then, you know, with the difference of like, hey, now that we have 2 classes, we can compare them. The censor, right? You have like a target you need to kill to get more of your resource. With the conduit, you're playing a push your luck game, right?
Yeah.
I need more piety this turn, but I'm at that point where risking 1d6 damage is pretty bad. Maybe I won't pray because I don't want to go down. I'll work with what I have. No, I definitely need the chance to get more piety. Let's keep praying to my God and see how they respond.
I really like, again, this gives the conduit a distinct class role and feel and identity within the party. And it's like a little fun. Each of these is a fun little, like, I don't say mini game makes it sound silly, but like you're having to sort of like manage your own sub game of your piety to get the most out of your class. And like Matt said, it's kind of like a push your luck thing and trying to create the conditions to get those triggers for your domains to get more piety.
So I like the conduit. I think it's cool. And then we're on to the anything else to say about the conduit, or should we move on to the next class?
It's got a lot of heals, a lot of blasts, a lot of again, very like traditional cleric type spells, but also, you know, ranging from summoning thorn walls to calling down, you know, pillars of flame, weakening enemies with words, cool stuff. But yeah, it plays much like a cleric, but with like a bunch of interesting distinctions.
And then we're on to the elementalist, whose trait is essence, and you're a blaster, and that it tells you that, you know, very clearly through your essence, right? You're gaining essence when you're doing particular type of damage to foes, right? You're hitting them with fire, and that fire is flowing back to you to give you more essence. So please burn things with fire. This is like sort of our wizard sorcerer class, but again, no,
Also,
you're
sort of like your like like a bender from Avatar. Like it's you know it's a little bit of both. You do have fireballs, but also you can do a bunch of really cool stuff and buff yourself and make interesting strikes. Again, it's all elemental based though, and void.
so
Which is
this
an element.
yeah, it's an element of gravity. Maybe that's an element. I mean, it's there are gravitons. Those are this is fantasy,
element.
not science. We don't there's an elementary particle possibly.
I mean, it's also like this is one of the more. I mean, there's a lot of diversity here, but like this might be the simplest one we've talked about. For essence, you start with some, you gain it at the beginning of combat, and you get essence whenever you hit something with an element. Straightforward. Go out there and throw fireballs at people.
Yeah, I think this is the point in which we should say that what your character's equipment, armor, and like basic way of moving around the battlefield and doing basic damage is completely divorced from your class, right? There's an option called kit. So if you want to be an elementalist that has a bow that shoots void arrows or something like that, you can have one of those, right? You pick the arcane archer elementalist kit class combo. But if you want to be, an elementalist in earth magic and you want to pick the mountain kit because you have like armor covered in crystals and a big stone hammer, you pick those. Some kits work better with other classes, right? Like, so, we didn't mention this, but we did in our playtest, right? There's ability scores and stuff like that. And some classes focus on some ability scores and some kits focus on those same ability scores. But the mixing and matching of, well, I want to be a ranger kit or the battle mine kit or stick and robe kit, right? If I want to make a traditional wizard, perfect, right? There's kind of an obvious one, but there's nothing stopping you from mixing these to get the correct sort of vision you have for your characters, because the kits not only give you like your armor bonus, but they give you speed bonus, and they tell you, are you good at doing damage in close combat, in like nearby, or like far away combat, right?
Right. And like Matt said, you could easily build a fire elementalist that has a robe that plays like a wizard and throws fireballs, or a heavily armored earth elementalist that hits things with a hammer and casts cool like rock things from the earth, or something even weirder. Like this is one of the cool things about kits, is like your arms and armament, which you will be using some, are completely different or completely distinct from your class. And I like this kind of thing. I like being able to make an armored wizard or a lightly armored fighter and have it work. MCDM Draw Steel gives you the option to do that. And it's not, they're kind of like distinct systems, so you're not really like hurting yourself. Like you don't take any penalties for like using heavy armor as a elementalist. It's just a different choice, which is cool.
Right. Yeah. It'll affect how much stamina you have, how easily you can get away from things. And right, you might play very differently, because a lot of the elementalist things, it's like, well, you would prefer to get away from an enemy and be far away and hit things with a big blast. You won't be as good at that, but you'll be good at other things. So if you work with your party, you can come up with a fun combination of these things. And there's a lot more classes, so we should briefly talk about some of the other ones, right?
Yeah,
let's
keep
Fury.
going. The Fury,
which is just like your barbarian. This is your barbarian class. This is, I want to hurt things with a big weapon.
it's also, and its class identity its class resources ferocity, and you can tell from how you get it what you're supposed to be doing. You get
Taking damage.
Take damage. Yeah, you get some at the beginning of combat, but you get more when you take damage, and you get more when you become winded, which is Draw Steel's version of bloodied. Or
Right, it's the World of Warcraft warrior.
Yeah. The more damage you take, the more things you can do. You're supposed to get up in the middle of things. You can be a berserker, a reaver, or a stormwight. Confusingly, stormwight allows you to shapeshift into a bunch of cool forms. You can be like a werebear or a were-raven, which is cool, and I'd love to have more time to talk about it, but it's like its own subsystem within a subsystem.
Right, you can get
if you're wondering about
additional
how,
kits, which is so cool.
We've mentioned the options, but like,
Yeah.
You can be a fury that transforms into like a werewolf and attacks with storm claws, which is sick. By the way, if this sounds like very like Diablo to any of you, like
Yes.
there's very strong like Diablo vibes. You can do things like leap up in the air and slam things with your hammer, which is awesome. I love that. But yeah, if you like that, this is for you. If you think that's goofy, then you may not love Draw Steel. But if you can, the fury is you get up in the mix, take damage, and do cool stuff.
Yeah, and it's, I think, the perfect embodiment of what people want to play when they want to play someone who is in the middle and then hurting things very badly. The next class is the Null. It's sort of like a monk, right?
Yeah.
But it's more like a psychic warrior.
Yeah, it's like a psychic warrior combined with a monk. Their ability is discipline. You gain some at the start of combat. The Null projects a null field, which does something distinct based on the tradition that you have. And whenever somebody in your null field does something, you get more discipline. And you get discipline when the director uses malice. So this is a very like also get up in the mix, but it's like tactical and using nifty maneuvers and cool abilities to empower yourself and debuff enemies and make interesting tactical decisions on the battlefield.
Right, and it's like, the default kit, I would say here might be something like martial artist, but if you want to be a dual wielder Null, you could. If you want to be a battle mind Null, then you absolutely could too. And the kits are like, here's what it doesn't tell you what the weapon looks like you
right.
or it does a little bit, but it's like, hey, what is this weapon? You're shooting arrows. Oh, okay, well, you can quickly reflavor that to, something else, right? Weapons are described as like polearm or a medium weapon or a large weapon.
Right. So
for something like this, I like that. I don't feel like for this type of game that a battle axe should be different than a longsword. Right? Decide what they want to do and let the players choose what their thing is.
This might be confusing based on what we've said. You'd think they would have like a 10-page list of like different weapons, but it's actually like, is it small, medium, large? Is it polearm? Is it ranged? And you can flavor it however you like, and it does this much damage and has this effect. And I frankly really like that.
Yeah, this is back to our fantasy power fantasy, right? This is the game for you to make that happen.
Yes.
And then speaking of that, the Shadow is sort of our rogue, but more like our person who, Nightcrawler teleports around.
Yeah. The rogue has
something similar to that.
Sort of like 3 distinct identities. Some of the subclasses on these classes are more meaningful than others. I think the Shadows are really like they push you in like a distinct direction of play. There's the College of Black Ash, which is literally going into shadows, manipulating them, teleporting around the battlefield. There's the College of Caustic Alchemy, which is bombs, poisons, acids, and then there's the College of the Harlequin Mask, which is doing trickery and illusions and confusing your enemies. These are all really fun, and they all, to me, seem to play really differently. So you can be like a classic World of Warcraft rogue and like pop up behind people and stab them, or you can be, uh, casting illusions and turning your enemies against each other. It's neat. There's a lot of really like interesting stuff in the Shadow. I think some really cool abilities.
Yeah.
Though some of
And
this art
then
is literally wielding some like curved blades. I'm like, are those like literally from like World of Warcraft? Like I feel like that's like the like the thing that you buy. That's what like an adamantium dagger looks like. Anyway, in case you're wondering what you're getting.
Yes. The next class is the Tactician, and that's our 4E Warlord, and you gain your resource focus.
Sorry, Matt, we missed something in the Shadow. We forgot to mention their resource, where we've been trying to stick to this.
Sure, yeah. What is the Shadow's resource? Insight, and you gain more insight when you're using your surges, which is another resource that we haven't talked about, to deal damage, right? And again, World of Warcraft, right? You're using your combo points to do extra things. So when you get a nice combo, you gain more of your resources back.
Surges are just an additional resource that you can use to do a little bit more damage or make your abilities more potent. Some classes get it, and there's some ways to give it. And the Shadow's identity is basically using surges and getting more resources for using them.
And then we're on to our 4E Warlord, the Tactician, and this is more of like, hey, you're thinking person's fighter.
Yeah, the Tactician's resources focus. You start with some. They also have a mark, which is a little like the Censor's Judgment, but it is more sort of like team-based. Like, here's all these things that you can allow a teammate can do, or here's some abilities that let them spend a recovery or shift, which is pretty cool. So you get focus whenever somebody does damage to your marked creature, or when somebody uses an ability. So again, it's encouraging you to get in the middle of things and work with your team to do cool stuff and take down a powerful foe.
Right. It's got that same basic ability from the Warlord 4E. It's like, I'm not going to hit things with my axe. I'm going to hit things with my fury. My other player character to my left on the table, you're going to hit that thing again and take it down because I told you to. I really like having these types of characters in a tactical combat game. They seem super fun to play and super fun for everyone else to play with them.
Yeah. You know that Matt and I love a Warlord. We drew up our own custom class for this. I really like what they've done with the Tactician here. I think it's neat.
Right. It shows that the true way to like make a Warlord character is to have a different system that could be built to have it. And then we've got two more classes that we gotta get to. The next is the Talent, and this is your Scion / more like a wizard than the Elementalist, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Elementalist is doing straightforward stuff. The Talent is doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, the Talent has some really powerful like spell casting abilities. The Talent also has a really interesting heroic resource, Clarity. You gain it the same way everybody else at the beginning of the combat, but also when any creature is force moved, you gain some. And they have a neat sort of ability to go into the negative for their heroic resource, which makes them strained, and some abilities do different things when you are strained. You also take damage if you go into the negatives, which introduces another kind of push your luck mechanic for the Talent. I think this is kind of like a neat little thing that you have to manage, and they can do some really powerful stuff, but at high risk if they are strained or low on clarity.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job on this one to get the sort of Jean Grey is overexerting herself to make a thing happen and play that sort of game of I'm going to push myself to the brink to do my craziest things, or I'm not going to do that because, well, I don't want to die, or I don't want to become ineffective for another round or two. So yeah, the talent is great. The psionics are great. I think this is something that this is my personal take on this game is they got so excited building really cool martial characters and building really cool divine characters and building really cool psionic characters. And I know this division is the holdover in my brain from playing games that are very similar to this. But if you want to make a really cool, like, hey, I'm a cool wizard, there's not as many options for you. So
Yeah.
you got to have like players that are excited about psionics or cool divine magic or cool martial magic because the talent is a way cooler class than the elementalist.
It is way cooler. I mean, yeah, you can do like force choke and, you know, blast people's minds and create, you know, illusions to, you know, fight for you. Like it's got a bunch
Manipulate time.
yeah, really cool abilities.
And I think this is a good thing overall because all the other fantasy role-playing games, the thing they've leaned on that's really cool is the traditional wizard casting a spell type of magic and, you know, praying to the gods or using the power of your minds as the afterthought added in. And so it's at least nice to see that reversed.
Yeah. There's also like a bunch of games where like this is a game about wizards, for wizards. Like you're a wizard. Like you know,
for wizards by wizards of the coast.
The final class is the troubadour, and this is not like a bard. It's basically a bard. I guess they just didn't want to call
this
it a
one's
bard.
just a bard.
Just a bard. Their heroic resource is drama. They get it when any hero is made winded, when anyone rolls a natural 19 or 20, when somebody dies, when a bunch of heroes use an ability on the same turn. They also have this really cool, I really like this mechanic, Matt. Like, if you die as a troubadour, but you manage to acquire 30 drama during that encounter, so a bunch of things happen, maybe somebody else dies, you can kind of like dramatically come back to life. And one of the cool things I think about the troubadour class is that it mentions some of these abilities suggest that this is a story being told later, because the troubadour is like actually like making changes, subtle changes to like what happens in combat, like sort of like retconning things. I really like this. I think this is a really like fun way to sort of flavor what the troubadour does. It does mention maybe you don't like this. Maybe this sort of like feels kind of too gamey, too meta for you. But the troubadour is kind of like my favorite class. I love this idea of, you know, you're telling the story of these battles and making subtle changes to make it more interesting or dramatic as you tell the tale.
No, this is what this game is all about. Like, this is how all the player abilities work. So, you know, I can't help but love this as well. And I almost wish they had leaned into like, hey, this is what this game is about, where like the player characters have things like this person, this hero is so tapped into the story that they can like rewrite reality as a story. Mm-hmm. And that's how their abilities work. Like, that's how a lot of like the things in this game work.
Yeah.
So, like, lean into that. You're the person who is affecting the story as they record it, you know?
Yeah. So that's the classes. And
the one thing I want to say about the Troubadour is, despite like the high concept of this, I think it's also like the Fury, like a great one for players who are not super into the like resource gaining stuff and they just want it to happen. Like the Fury one, it just happens. You're gonna get hit and you get the stuff. It's really straightforward. The Troubadour is the opposite approach, which is you're just gonna get lucky sometimes.
You'll just
and
get
that's drama, the roll of fate. And so just sit back, enjoy, use your abilities, and then occasionally you'll get a huge spike in power and then do something cool. I think for the play style of mini people who would be at my table, this is perfect.
Yeah. So I like, here's the thing. I like all of those classes. I think they're all really well designed. I think they're all very distinct which is cool, which is a crazy thing to come up with 9 different classes. Like,
It's so much work.
so much work.
Went into
We
these
mentioned there's like a
classes.
little bit of overlap in some things. The talent's a bit like the elementalist. The censor has a mark a little bit like the tactician, but like
Yeah.
there's a ton of difference between all of those classes, and there's a ton of difference within classes. So we wanted to mention them because it was really, we didn't talk about them much last time. They're really cool. Let's talk briefly about kits. We mentioned them. I want to go into just a bit more detail.
Yeah, sure.
It is literally just you pick a kit that has armor, a weapon, and then like a little bit of other flavor. So your kit gives you maybe a speed bonus, a damage bonus, a bonus to something like disengage or your stability, and then a signature ability, which is basically your weapon attack. So like we mentioned, that's not coming from your class, which may have a different signature ability. But if you pick the Arcane Archer kit, you have an exploding arrow, and you can use that anytime. If you pick the Dual Wielder, you have a double strike, which you can use anytime instead of an ability. This is cool. This means you can, and they're all equally effective regardless of your class.
Yeah. And like, because damage is significant, like 1 damage is important, these kits are telling you where on the battlefield you should fight, right? If you pick Cloak and Dagger, it's telling you should fight everywhere on the battlefield.
Right.
If you're picking the Sniper, or I think it has a different name, not Sniper, but no, it is Sniper. It's telling you, hey, you need to get really good bonuses and hit things for tier 3 from really long distances. So I really like I really like these kits. I like the fact that they pretty much can all work with any class. The divorce, like the thing that frustrates me like the most about fantasy games is, a game telling you that, this character can't have armor, or this character can't have an axe, or can't punch things effectively. Well, what if I want to do that? What if I want to be a wizard that punches people? Well, yeah, finally you can.
And I'll go through great lengths in something like 3.5 to break the game so that I can be a wizard that wears armor. Not for any particular reason, just because I think it's fun. But yeah, you can just do it in Draw Steel, which is great, because you should be able to, because if you don't just give people the options, they'll do what I do and, scour through the rules to come up with some sort of annoying corner case to be a Githyanki wizard and wear heavy armor and wield a great sword, So just let them do it.
So some of my big takeaways on this, and maybe we can save the director's advice for a future
that'll make
episode.
sense to talk about with monsters anyway, so we'll lump that together with the monsters section.
Because there is a huge director's section in this. You are not left adrift on how to run this game. But I think my big takeaways here include just a lot of very small, smart decisions in how combat or classes are designed. For example, here's one. NPC allies. If an NPC ally fights alongside the heroes, give the players the ally stat block and let them control the NPC during combat. Like, there's no other way to do this that's going to be fun. This is such a good rule, because in a tactical combat game, you can't have the director, the game master, running, the players' hirelings or their temporary allies that they brought in to deal with this threat. Yeah, let the players do that. And that's just one example. The like nitty-gritty rules are filled with good stuff like this.
Yeah, I like the director section. I will say, sort of like big picture, and I think we suggested this before, but my impression is that this, to me, I feel like this would be a challenging game to run. This looks like it's difficult for the GM. That being said, this looks extremely exciting for players, especially players who want options and want to be able to build a unique and interesting and powerful character. Maybe more so than any D20 game that I have ever encountered. Like the player options and diversity and ability to like actually do stuff, especially in combat, is unmatched in any game compared to Draw Steel.
When this game was first announced, MCDM and Matt Colville, sort of said like, we don't really know what kind of game we want to make. We just know we like games and we think we're pretty good at game design, and we're gonna figure that out. And I think they did figure that out, and they put out a quality game. What I really appreciate about this game is, I think in an alternate bizarro timescape in the multiverse, right? MCDM just sort of said, well, let's make our generic set of rules. Let's make our, here's a generic fantasy role-playing game. And while it is a generic fantasy role-playing game, it's a fantasy role-playing game for people who want powerful characters and really interesting tactical fights where players are constantly being bounced up and down, like in their hit points, and back and forth across the battlefield. There's crazy effects. There's crazy monsters, which we'll talk about next time to deal with. That is the game. If you want a fantasy role-playing game and you don't give a shit about how combat works, if it, like, in your mind you're like, well, for me it's about investigation and exploration and picking locks and crawling through dungeons and stuff like that, then this probably isn't the game for you. If you want a game that's about people being sad and crying, then like Lord of the Rings or something, this game is also not for you. But if you're like, damn, I I wish playing 5e combat is stupid and boring and a slog, but I like combat. I want that to be a good chunk, maybe the most significant chunk of the time we spend at the table, then this is absolutely the game for you.
Yeah, and Matt's right. When they set out to do this, I felt like they were being a little like cavalier about like what they wanted to do. But credit to them, like the Mad Lads did it. Like they I think really pulled this off. They figured out, they built the plane as they were flying it. They figured out what they wanted to make, and they did it. And Matt's right. Like if you want a game about feelings or intrigue or investigation or powerful NPC interactions, it's maybe not the one for you. But like there's lots of games that have incredibly detailed rules for social interactions and character interactions and all kinds of things, and then kind of hand-wavy rules for combat. And this is just the inversion of that, right? There are actually some like decent rules for everything else. They're just
negotiations rules. Yeah, they're just not the focus.
There's
right?
not the focus.
They're there for when that comes up.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be satisfied with them. But this is a game that knows that 50+% of your time will be doing cool fights and feeling like heroes.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean that like you would have to move to the system, but like if we're being realistic, even if the focus of your 5e game is something besides combat, you still might be spending half of your time every session doing combat, because that's how long combat takes in 5e. So like if you're going to include D20 style combat, maybe it should be fun. Maybe it should be cool. And
what a revolutionary idea. What if it should be tactical and interesting?
Yeah,
what if you should go down and then someone comes up with a cool combo and pulls you out of the situation?
Yeah. So I definitely like get the argument. I think when I read the playtest, I was tepid on this or unconvinced. But like I'll tell you, I am 100% convinced on Draw Steel. I think this is really good. I think this is really great. I still I don't know that I would ever want to run this, but like more than ever, I would love to play in a Draw Steel game. And I would love to see it demonstrated. I think there's like a ton of cool potential here. I do wonder, like, it does sort of feel like this is designed for VTT play maybe, or maybe to be like made into a video game. But even if it's not, I think that there's something like really, really cool and interesting and fun here. And The combat seems exciting. It seems like fun and interesting in a way that like very little TTRPG combat is. And I think that is definitely like a cool innovation that is worth paying attention to.
I think here's the like cool thing is I believe they have a free, or sorry, it's not free. It's a $10 start here adventure. And then Matt Colville has also produced a like actual play of people running the start here adventure for people to watch. So like this is just like smart game design. Like here, yeah, I would have liked the starting adventure to come with the packet of buying the two things, but you can also bundle them together and buy all three. And then if you're a new DM, you can watch someone run through this and pick up on their successes and failures and be like, all right, I'm now, I've read the starting adventure. I've watched someone play the starting adventure, so I kind of feel like I've played it. Now I'm ready to run it for other people, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
I guess my other like big takeaway is, if you liked D&D 4E, and I'll say any part of it.
If you liked it at all, yeah.
If you liked it at all, if you were not immediately repulsed by it, which I think is probably the majority of people.
Yeah.
I want to be honest. Like, I know there are some very loud, very vocal 4E haters, and I've occasionally been among them. But I would say the majority of people who play fantasy role-playing games liked at least some aspects of 4E. And if you're one of those people, you will also like Draw Steel because, again, we called it 4E.5 in the playtest. It's different enough in the core bones of the system that it's not that, but I would say it's taking as a starting point people who liked any part of 4E and making a good fantasy role-playing system. That's what it is.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. We've softened on 4E, and I think there were a lot of things that it did well, and we've seen that a lot of them got adapted into 5E or other similar games because they were good, and throwing them out was a mistake. And Draw Steel has sort of like completed that process and taken, I think, just about everything that was worth saving and rolled it into like a whole new system that takes sort of the core idea and part of the design philosophy, but like makes it good.
If you were to run a Draw Steel campaign, do you have any ideas what it would look like? Because I have one very clear idea, and then most of my other ideas for fantasy campaigns, I'd be like, no, I'll run this in something else.
Yeah, I mean, Sky Pirates. Like I would do like a Sky or Space Pirates thing, and there'd be a lot of combats on ships and floating islands and lots of like vertical battlefields to throw people off of or fall off of. This is one of those things where like if I had infinite time and resources, to draw battle maps and whatever, that would be so much fun to do. But I was thinking about that the entire time I was reading this. I was like, this is what I would run. This is the game that I would run in this setting.
You know what I was thinking about as I was reading this? I was like, damn, like I wish they would make a superhero game based on this system.
There was one piece of art. Sorry, did you see this is one piece of art that looked like they had capes and were fighting? I was like, yes, this is a superhero game. Like this would work so well as a superhero game. Yeah,
that was from their reused from their talent. I will point out there is some reused art from earlier MCDM publications, but that particular art you're talking about is from their like psionics supplement for 5E. Which they I think specifically wanted to make it look like an X-Men cover. Mm-hmm. And so if I was running a Draw Steel game, it would be fantasy superheroes. I might take their default setting of capital city of magic and magic technology and intrigue at the center of the material plane and make it about my shadow, my rogue is some kind of nightcrawler superhero, and the elementalist is, well, okay, obviously, like the Human Torch. Like, I'd let my players be like, hey, you're an elf superhero. What does that look like? Pick one of these classes. And then my players would be dealing with superhero problems, which involve a little bit of intrigue, a little bit of negotiation, a little bit of investigation. But it's mostly about setting up these cool, epic fights.
Mostly
with,
about punching bad guys.
Villains.
Yeah. Actually, we should come back to this because, I felt the same thing.
Well, we need to do a future episode where we outline a Draw Steel campaign.
God,
maybe we'll go with that.
Put a pin in that, listeners, because that was the other thing that I was thinking about, especially with some of these, is that, like, this is a clear, like, superhero ability, and let's lean into that.
I'm so excited that, like, here's the other cool thing, is that not only did they, through creating this RPG, and, they started it way before with their supplements, Kingdoms and Warfare, Strongholds and Follower, all their, like, 5e supplements, their short-lived magazine, Too Good for This World, Arcadia, is that MCDM has built, like, a new gaming company, right? That's not just like a publisher, right? That's a publisher and creator, which is no small feat in the year of our Lord 2025, and that's to be commended. And they did here's the other thing that I really love, is they did, a crowdfunding campaign, and they raised a lot of money, and they delivered exactly what they promised, which was, they promised, we don't know how long development's going to take, but we're going to work on this until it's done and polished. And they did that, and they didn't spend all of their time getting distracted by making bespoke playmats and dice and stuff like that. Now, I'm sure those might come later for people who want it, but we have the core books, and they're super functional.
Yeah. A year and change after I backed this, maybe close to 2 years, but still, like, I've got the thing, and I feel very pleased about the money that I threw at this.
And they actually did how crowdfunding is in theory supposed to work like, hey, if you can give us the capital to keep us going for a year and change, that'll let us pay people and commission art to, like, work on this full time, and we'll do it. Because most role-playing game Kickstarters work with someone has made the game, and they need the crowdfunding to like get it in to the final form in your hands, but the game is already made. They didn't make the game. They did the crowdfunding, then made the game, which, again, I think that's how it's supposed to work. It's not how it works in the current crowdfunding economy, and so I applaud them for actually doing that.
Yeah. Okay, I could talk about this for a lot longer, and we will, because we have a whole other book to talk about. We'll cover
and parts of this book we didn't get to.
Yeah, we'll cover a little bit more in this book, including the director section, and we'll talk about the monsters and really, like, the GMing part of Draw Steel next time. But strong recommendations, really cool stuff here. Definitely take a look at this. There is a lot of things that you can borrow for your games, even if you're not gonna run Draw Steel. But this is a really cool, interesting, unique thing that they've got here. If you like tactical combat even a little bit, you really ought to check this out, because it is it does everything that D&D does, but, like, good. Like, it's so, if you're going to be putting miniatures on a battle map, I think you ought to consider doing it in something like Draw Steel, because it's just it's so much better than the sort of, like, standard D&D combat style. So I think it's really cool stuff.
And if you have questions about Draw Steel or thoughts, you can always drop us a line at dmofnone@gmail.com, or you can, in the show notes, click on the link and join our Discord.
If you'd like more of this, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks
for bearing with us. Look forward to more talk on Draw Steel soon. And whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.
I am Dungeon Master.
You
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice.